For the past 2 years, we've watched almost every major platform that gamers actually use quietly hand your data over to government regulators, and barely anyone bothered to tell you it was happening. And I want you to really sit with that word, quietly, because that's the whole trick. Discord rolled out mandatory age verification and then handed third-party safety monitors access to what are basically private user conversations. Think about that for a second. The messages you send to your friends, the stuff you assumed was between you and them, routed through outside companies whose entire job is to watch. Xbox and PlayStation, both of them have been quietly baking permanent account tracking architecture straight into the hardware you paid for. Not a service you opted into. The console sitting under your TV right now. And every single time, the justification came down to the exact same 2 words: protecting children. Now, nobody's going to stand up and argue against protecting kids. That's exactly why it works. That phrase has turned into a universal skeleton key. Governments use it to force tech companies to bolt surveillance infrastructure directly into the products you personally use every single day. And the moment anyone objects, the answer is always the same. What? You don't care about children? It shuts the conversation down before it even starts, and almost every company folds the second a lawyer walks into the room. They don't fight. They calculate. They look at the cost of a legal battle versus the cost of just quietly doing what they're told, and they pick the cheaper option every time. Almost every company. Because while all of that was quietly going on in the background, the New York Attorney General sent Valve a demand to build a global tracking system for every single Steam user on Earth. Not New York users, not American users, all of them. More than 130 million people. And Valve, in a rare moment of actually standing up, filed a motion to dismiss yesterday. That's what I want to dig into in this video, because the details of this one matter way more than the headline makes it sound. I need to be really clear about why this specific demand is completely different from the usual government pressure we see on tech companies. This wasn't asking Valve to add a terms of service checkbox. It wasn't asking them to throw up an age pop-up when you launch a game. Those things are annoying, sure, but they're surface level. The New York AG wanted Valve to install location detection technology on every Steam account on the platform worldwide. Every account, every country. A system whose entire purpose is to know where you are. And here's the part that makes it genuinely absurd when you follow the logic all the way through. This wasn't to catch criminals. It wasn't to stop anything actually dangerous. It was to catch New Yorkers using VPNs. Let that sink in for a second. A VPN is a tool millions of people use for completely ordinary reasons. Privacy, security, getting around region locks. And to find the New Yorkers using one, the plan was to surveil more than 130 million people globally. You'd be watching the entire planet to find a handful of people in Manhattan? That's not a targeted enforcement tool, that's a dragnet, dressed up as one. And on top of that, they wanted Valve to start collecting significantly more personal data from every single user on the platform for expanded age verification. And this is where it gets almost funny, because Steam already age verifies. It happens through every single payment method the platform uses. You literally cannot buy anything on Steam without going through a payment system that already confirms you're an adult. The verification the AG said was missing already exists. So this was never really about verification at all. It was about building the machine. The age check was the excuse. The infrastructure was the point. And Valve put out a rare public statement about this, and the language they used is genuinely alarming when you actually sit down and read it slowly. They said that complying with these demands would require implementing invasive technologies for every user worldwide. Read that again. Not for New York users, not for the people the law is supposedly about. For every user worldwide, one state's regulator reaching across the entire planet into accounts in countries that have nothing to do with New York law. And honestly, I feel like the gaming coverage has been so laser-focused on the whole loot box gambling debate that everyone completely buried this part. And I get why. Loot boxes are the flashy story, the one that's easy to argue about, but the New York AG didn't just want to regulate loot boxes, they wanted Valve to build an entire surveillance system covering millions of people, just to comply with the laws of one single US state. And Valve straight up said that deal would have been bad for users, bad for other game developers, and bad for their ability to innovate. So instead of settling quietly, the way basically everyone else does, they took it to court. But here's the thing you have to understand. Valve is not the only platform getting these demands. This is not some weird one-off. Discord is rolling out mandatory global age verification in the second half of this year. Epic, Xbox, PlayStation, they've all been adding account verification layers and identity check requirements over the last couple of years, all in direct response to exactly this kind of legislative pressure. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it, because the pattern is always the same. A government body sends a demand, the platform runs the numbers, it decides it's cheaper and easier to comply than to fight, and it quietly implements the actual surveillance. Nobody makes a big deal about it. There's no announcement, no headline, no press tour. Users never find out it happened. The data policy just changes one day, buried in an update nobody reads. And that's how it really works. Not one big dramatic moment. Slowly, across hundreds of these quiet decisions that never make headlines, the internet shifts from something that treats you as a user into something that treats you more like a person, to be permanently monitored. No single step feels like the one that broke it. Each one is small, each one is reasonable, and you add them all up over a few years, and you're living inside something completely different from what you started with. So what Valve actually did differently is that they made the demand public. And I don't want that to slide past you, because this is the real story. They published exactly what New York asked for. They told everyone it would be bad for users, and then they filed a motion to dismiss. That transparency on its own is genuinely rare, because usually these demands happen in private negotiations, behind closed doors, and nobody outside the boardroom ever hears about them. You just wake up one day and the data collection policy has changed, and good luck ever figuring out why. The only reason you even know this demand existed, the only reason you're watching a video about it right now, is because Valve chose to tell you. Most platforms never would. Most platforms would have signed the deal, updated the policy, and let you find out never. So Valve's defense is not just that loot boxes aren't gambling. They're defending something that matters to basically anyone who has ever bought a digital game, a digital skin, anything digital at all. The AG's lawsuit specifically targeted the fact that Steam skins can be traded and sold, and that they hold real monetary value that users can actually pull out. And Valve's response to this is honestly one of the strongest defenses of digital ownership I've seen from any major company. They straight up said, and this is a direct quote, "We think that the transferability of a digital game item is good for consumers. It gives a user the ability to sell or trade an old or unwanted item for something else." Now, that sounds obvious when you hear it. Of course, you should be able to sell something you own, but it's actually a pretty radical position right now, and here's why. The entire direction of the tech industry for the last decade has been the exact opposite, making digital purchases non-transferable, non-refundable, and locked to a single account on a single platform forever. You buy it, it's yours, and it dies with your account. That's the model everyone's been pushing toward. And here's the irony. You don't even own your Steam games in the traditional sense, but you do own the skins, you can sell them, you can trade them, you can pull real money out of them. That is more genuine digital ownership than basically anything else in the industry right now. And the settlement the AG wanted would have eliminated that entirely. So look at what's actually happening here when you put both pieces together. The same government action that wanted to surveil every Steam user on Earth also wanted to strip away the most meaningful form of digital ownership available to PC gamers. Both at the same time, both wrapped inside a child protection lawsuit, surveillance on one hand, killing digital ownership on the other, and a picture of a kid on the label so nobody looks too closely. Make it make sense. Okay, look. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Valve is perfect, or that the loot box conversation isn't worth having, because it is. The gambling argument has some real points behind it. There are genuine concerns about randomized reward systems, especially for younger players, and those absolutely deserve an honest discussion. I'm not waving that away. But none of that justifies building a global surveillance infrastructure for millions of people, for Steam users all over the world. None of it justifies mass data collection from every user on the planet to solve a problem that's technically specific to one American state. You don't burn down the whole house because one room needs cleaning, and the reason Valve refusing actually matters is not because there's some crazy hero who ran the story to the end and saved us all. It's simpler and honestly more important than that. It's because of what happens when nobody ever says no. When every single platform just complies with every surveillance demand without ever pushing back, the demands get bigger, the infrastructure gets more invasive, the data collection gets broader, and eventually the baseline expectation just shifts from platforms collecting the minimum data they actually need to platforms collecting everything they possibly can, on the off chance some government body might ask for it later. Collect first, justify never. And we've already watched this exact thing happen in real time with age verification. What started as a few targeted bills in a handful of states and regions is now a full-blown global compliance race, where every major platform is building out verification systems for one reason. Nobody wants to be the one company that didn't. That's it. That's the whole engine. Fear of being the exception. And that fear is exactly how you end up with the entire internet quietly rebuilt around watching you, with no single villain you can point at. But Valve just proved that a tech company can say no to a government surveillance demand and not immediately die. And honestly, that hasn't happened in a while. One company drew a line, said this far and no further, and did it out loud where everyone could see. Whether they win in court is a different question. But the fact that somebody finally refused publicly is the part worth paying attention to. So yeah, that's it for this video. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, you know what to do. Drop a comment, let me know what you think. Should more companies be fighting back like this, or is Valve going to end up standing alone? I'll see you in the next one.